Hello again, thanks for joining me. I've written 7 books on the title Israel and the Church and the Kingdom of God, and we're going through it in these studies. The 7 books are available from the website. We'll print the address on the videos. We're up to number 37, so we're well into the studies. There's about 60, I think, or maybe 70. But we're in the period of just before Jesus returns. We've looked at Israel, we've looked at the Garden of Eden, where God's plan started, and we've gone through the Old Testament, and we've gone through the early church, and we're in the last days now, just before the millennial reign of Christ. So the future studies, the next study in the next weekend is the first resurrection. I'm talking about the first resurrection. Controversial subjects. Every man and his dog's got an opinion on Revelation, so I'm not claiming to have all the revelation. I'm just presenting what I see, and it's up to you to decide whether you believe it or not. Ask God, ask the Holy Ghost. He'll lead you into all truth. I'm not the Holy Ghost. I can only say what has been revealed to me. We're looking at Revelation 12, and I've called it the Bride and the Dragon. And you'll see why as we get on. Let's read it, Revelation 12, verse 1 to 6. There's many views on it. This is my understanding. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven. Amazing. Not on earth. Heaven wondered. The angels thought, what's this? A great wonder in heaven. A wonder is something you don't understand. It's marvellous, it's wonderful. So, a great wonder in heaven. All heaven must have been wondering, what's all this about? A woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and paid to be delivered. So there's a picture of a woman, and we'll look at her clothing, but she's pregnant, heavily pregnant, and she's waiting to be delivered, and she's paining, she's in travailing in pain, ready to be delivered. So that's the first picture. Now the second wonder, and there appeared another wonder in heaven. All the angels says, what's all this about? They couldn't understand the woman. You know, the angels don't know everything. It says the angels inquire to look after salvation. I don't think they've got the capacity to love like we have. And I think the angels couldn't understand why God would sacrifice his own son for wicked people. That's not logical, is it? And the angels inquired. They didn't understand about salvation, because I don't think angels have the capacity to love, to obey or disobey. But angels weren't made in God's image, were they? We're made in God's image. We have the capacity to love. I don't think the angels have. They can serve God and worship him, but that doesn't prove love. That's another thought of mine. You can accept it or reject it. So there's another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. Well, the last Sunday I proved who that dragon was, and I think I've got the scriptures again today. And his tail, so the dragon's tail, drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child. So the dragon wasn't after the woman, he was waiting to get the child, as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. So that's a clue to the child. And the child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's 1,260 days, 3.5 years, 42 months. So that's a very scriptural number, 3.5 years. I want to say first, Revelation is not a random collection of incidents, visions and dialogues. Because God's a God of order, not confusion. So there's an order to it. We may not understand the order, but God's a God of order. He doesn't just throw things out. If he gives 3 parables about apparently the same subject, you know, the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son, they're in perfect order for a reason, because God's not arbitrary, is he? He's into every detail. Every hair of my head is numbered. God knows the number of hairs I've got. There's not many left now, but he knows all the number of the hairs. I believe that's literal, because with DNA we can understand humanity, can't we, and everything about us. How much more God? So God's into every detail, so nothing's arbitrary in the Bible. It's there for a purpose. That we don't understand it is self-evident, isn't it? But God's a God of order, so I look for the order in things, rather than just think, oh, it's random. So I think the order of Revelation is like the order of Genesis. In chapter 1 of Genesis, God gives an overview. It said he made the earth in 6 days, and male and female created he them. So it tells you in chapter 1 that he made the world and the animals, and he made man and woman. But chapter 2, he goes into detail, and he tells how we made man and woman. He made Adam of the dust of the ground, and he made Eve from Adam. He didn't make Eve from the dust of the ground, but you wouldn't know from reading chapter 1, would you? It's just a general overall picture. And I think Revelation's like that. It gives you an overall picture in one chapter, and then the next 3 chapters are going into details and honing in on specific points. That's the way God works through the Bible. That's God's way of dealing with things. And as a television producer, I understand that. I've used the illustration many times, but I'll use it again. When you're learning about television, you learn that before you do a scene, like television and cinema's made in scenes, haven't they? You can click from scene 1 to scene 2. And the separate little incidents, scene 1 leads to scene 2. But the separate incidents, one may be in a living room, and then the second scene is by the seaside. And the second scene is in a factory. So the separate incidents. Maybe I'll use the studio. Maybe I want to show Godfrey close up because he's excited and I want to get the expression. But if I hold in on Godfrey at the beginning of the scene, you see a man with anticipation. But anticipation for what? Is he in a brothel? Is he by the seaside? Is he anticipating his wife is going to make him a lovely tea? You don't know anything, so you put your own explanation on it. So you do an establishing shot. I would film the whole of the people in the studio. And then when it goes to Godfrey, you know he's sat next to a man with a green shirt on, and you know he's in the room and it's a small room, etc. So you give the overall picture and then you hold in. And we use God's methods because I'm made in God's image, so that's a sensible way to do it. So that may help you to study the Bible. Look for the overall picture and then look for the honing in. I'm just throwing that out. Maybe it'll help you. It helped me tremendously, especially with Revelation. All right, the pregnant woman ready to be delivered. Who is she? She has the 12 stars, doesn't she? Round her head, clothed with the sun and the moon. Mary, Mother Mary, clothed with the sun and the moon. Can you see the halo of the sun and the moon and the 12 stars? Our Lady of Europe. When I first went to Europe, when it was the EC, in all the airports, they had a postcard, Welcome to Europe, and it had Mary with the 12. It's not Mary. That's the whore of Babylon to the Catholics. They say it's Mary, but it's not Mary. It's the Mother of God, Queen of Heaven. That's the whore of Babylon. They're telling you. So have you got more pictures, Jay? Notice the crescent moon. The last study was about Islam. There's the crescent moon with the Catholic Church. There's the EU with the 12 stars dedicated to Mary. No, dedicated to the whore of Babylon. There's the flag of Europe, one of the flags, 12 stars. So they're telling you what they believe. It's the whore. They say it's Mary, but it's not. We need to turn to Genesis 37. This is the dream that Joseph had. And he dreamed yet another dream and told it his brethren and said, Behold, I've dreamed a dream more. This is the dream after the fat cattle and the thin cattle. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obedience to me. So Jacob had 12 brothers, didn't it? 12 stars. So the 11 stars worshipped Joseph. And he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him. Why? And said unto him, What is this dream that you've dreamed? And he interpreted the dream. He knew what the dream was, Jacob. He said, Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come and bow down to ourselves to thee, to the earth? So he identified himself, Jacob, as the father with the 12 stars. So, for me, that's Israel. The woman is Israel, because Jacob is Israel, and Jacob said, it dreams about me. I'm the father of Israel. The children, 11 tribes bow down to Jesus. Yes, of course they will. Joseph's a type of Jesus, isn't he? So the 11 tribes will bow down. Judah is the main tribe, isn't he? David. God's chosen. Israel was scattered throughout the world, but God put Judah in Babylon and brought them back. Because salvation is of the Jews, Jesus said to the woman at the well. She said, well, we shall worship God in Samaria. That was the capital of Israel under Ahab. Ahab changed it to capital to Samaria, so it was the capital of the nation of Israel with 10 tribes. We worship God in Samaria, but you worship God in Jerusalem, Judah. And he said, well, the times come when they won't worship at any place. They worship God in spirit and truth. Nevertheless, salvation is of the Jews, not Israel. So I don't want to go into that, but that you'll find that interesting. Salvation is of the Jews, and he was talking about the tribe of Israel, the 2 tribes, Judah, not Israel. Because she said, well, we're Israel, we worship God in Samaria. He said, no, salvation is of the Jews. But it doesn't matter where you worship, because the time will come when we worship God in spirit and in truth. We're in those days now, aren't we? So Jacob said it was him, and I accept that it's Israel. The problem is Israel played the whore. Isaiah 57 verse 3. God chose Israel, didn't he, as his wife. But she played the whore, she had other lovers, other gods, and he divorced her. But draw nigh hither, ye sons of the sorceress. He calls Israel the sons of the sorceress. That's surely Babylon, because Babylon deceives the whole world by her sorceries, it says in Revelation. That's pharmakia, that's enchantment with drugs, using drugs to seduce people. All Satanists use drugs. Witchcraft uses drugs. The orgies, they all take drugs. From the Druids, you know, the magic mushrooms or whatever they had. Drugs and sex and music, drugs, sex and rock and roll are all part of witchcraft. You can't practice witchcraft without satanic music, drugs and perverted sex. That's witchcraft. Always the three of them. You need perverted sex, you need drugs and you need music. Because it invokes demons. Music can get you to worship God or worship demons. It's neutral music, isn't it? I'm a musician, so A flat is not satanic and it's not heavenly. It's just vibrations. But the devil can use it or God can use it. So it triggers something in people. It makes them want to dance. It makes them want to worship. Can you see? So it's part of witchcraft. Ye sons of the sorcerers, you seed of the adulterer and the whore. He said, you sons of the whore. He's calling Israel a whore. Amazing, isn't it? Well, the history of revivals. Every revival has come out of Babylon, the whore. A baby born to a prostitute, a harlot, is a virgin. A prostitute doesn't produce a prostitute, it produces a pure baby, a virgin. And when it grows up, it decides, I don't want to follow my mother, I'll stay a virgin, or it can prostitute itself. Every revival has come out of deadness, apostasy, Babylon, because every revival reverts to Babylon. They prostitute themselves through the love of men, through finance, through whatever. But every revivalist starts pure. The Baptists and the Pentecostals and the Methodists, it was a pure revival. But after a while, the Methodist revival, it was wonderful. But on John Wesley's deathbed, they were fighting over who'd take the leadership on. That's Babylon, isn't it? Voting and politics had come in to the church. And I was born at the beginning of the Pentecostal revival, and that was pure and it was great, men of God. But now it's jobs for the boys and it's about how many buildings do they acquire. It's become a business. It's registered with a business corporation. Assemblies of God is a business, so is healing. I don't know about the apostolic, but they're registered as a business in Company's House, corporation. So they've become businesses. I understand that. It's a way of all flesh. My point is that every revival reverts back to the harlot. So Israel were the harlot. And when Jesus was born, he was born of a whore. Because Israel had played the whore. They hadn't repented. They were still backslidden when Jesus was born. So Jesus was born out of the whorish Israel. I mean, that's hard to take. But the virgin comes out of the whore. And it's through history. The history of Israel, the history of revivals. The new revival, the new judge, always came out of apostasy and decadence. This woman with the 12 stars and the sun and the moon, they know. They believe it refers to the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles. These in turn represent the people of both the Old and the New Covenant, of whom Mary is their queen. So that's the Catholic theology. They understand it's the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles. And Mary is the queen of both. But it's not Mary, is it? It's Isis, it's Osiris, Isis and Britannia. All the gods change, the gods and goddesses change in every empire, don't they? Jupiter becomes something else. And so Isis, Britannia, Diana of the Ephesians, it's the same goddess, Queen of Heaven. The woman in Israel's last days, the situation's unchanged. Israel are a nation again. They weren't a nation. The Balfour Declaration didn't plant Israel as a nation. It gave them a homeland. That's different. It gave them a place to stay. they perverted it and it became a nation many years later. It wasn't a nation. The nation wasn't in 1948, it was a homeland in 1948. The Balfour Declaration, you can read it on the internet, I've read it, and they gave them a homeland to Lord Rothschild. It wasn't a state of Israel. And they backslidden, they've not repented. Israel is still the whore, they've not repented. Don't forget, we're grafted onto Israel, we're spiritual Israel, aren't we? I'm just throwing that in. So, you can still worship God, even if you're dancing around the golden calf. People in Babylon are still worshipping God. God's people backslid and they danced around the golden calf, but they said, let's have a feast to the Lord. They didn't say, let's have a feast to Baal. They didn't put a pig on the altar, they put a calf. They made a golden calf. A calf, something that you worship, and not your worship, but you sacrifice, don't you? So it's a good image. The cherubims have calf feet. The cherubims have the face of a calf. So it wasn't a bad image. They didn't say, let's put a pig on the altar and worship Molech. They thought they were worshipping the real God. That's what God's like. These are the gods that brought you out of Egypt. So they were misplaced. So they thought they were worshipping God. They weren't. But in their mind, they were worshipping God. So that's the woman. I believe it's Israel, which includes the church spiritually, but it's the whore. Let's look at the second wonder. A great red dragon waiting to destroy the woman's seed. I have a question. Why didn't the dragon just kill the woman? Why didn't the dragon kill the woman? Why is he waiting? Because the woman says, he wants the woman to last forever. It's the child he wants. Can you see? Otherwise he'd kill the woman. But the woman says, if you kill the woman, the baby dies, doesn't it? If you kill a pregnant woman, the baby dies if it's not ready to be delivered. So he doesn't want the woman because the woman is his. He's corrupted the woman. Of course he has. Satan's corrupted every woman that God's made. The first woman in the Garden of Eden, the devil corrupted. When God chose his wife, Israel, 40 days later, they're dancing round the golden calf. The devil's easy meat. The woman is the way to attack the man. The woman didn't deceive Adam. He knew he couldn't, so he deceived Eve to get at Adam. And Adam, for the love of Eve, sinned. The devil can always corrupt the woman. The early church, the bride of Christ, a few weeks after, Ananias and Sapphira, corruption, covetousness came in, and God had to deal swiftly with it. Can you see how the devil, every revival that's ever been of Almighty God, the devil has corrupted after 40 years or 100 years. Usually after 10 years the corruption sets in and it's not manifest till. But is there any revival that's lasted? Is there any revival that's not gone back to the whore? Is there every woman, because it's God's church revival, isn't it? Is there any revival that hasn't gone back? The devil's deceived. So it's his woman. He'd want the bride to live for, the woman to live for 10 million years. I'll go on to it. The next study is the war in heaven. And when the bride goes up, the devil's cast out. I'm going to show you from my understanding. And that's what he's frightened of. He's not worried about the woman. He can corrupt the woman. He's worried about the child. And I don't believe the child is Jesus. I know most people think that a man-child who was caught up to God and ruled the nations with a rod of iron. But it's not only Jesus who'll rule the nations with a rod of iron. But let's look at the second wonder, the great red dragon. Who is he? Well, it's obviously Satan, 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns. Revelation 12:9. This shows you who it is. And the great dragon, so it's talking about the same dragon, obviously. The great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. So it nails it on. The dragon, Satan, the serpent, and the devil. That's the names of the same person, isn't it? The devil is Satan, and the dragon is Satan, and the serpent is Satan. So it tells you that the dragon has 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns. I'm not going to the symbolism. That's not the part of the study. But it's Satan himself. So Satan is waiting to devour the man-child. So he doesn't attack the woman. He never attacks the whore because it's his. Satan never attacks the backslidden church, does he? He wants to stop the next revival, the baby that's coming out of the whore, so he's waiting. He knows that God will revive it, because God always does. He knows history. God revived Israel when they backslid. God revived the church and sent another revival when they backslid. So the devil knows. So he's after the new life. He's after the revival. He's not after the church. That's his anyway. He's corrupted that. But he doesn't want revival. He doesn't want a new birth. He doesn't want the fresh life of Christ. Can you see the picture? I don't think the description fits Jesus. He was born of a woman, Israel, true, and he'll rule the nations with a rod of iron. Revelation 19:15. This is how people think, and I understand that. Revelation 19:15. This is Jesus, clearly in Revelation in the context. And out of Jesus' mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and the wrath of Almighty God. So Jesus he'll fit the man-child up to this point, won't he? But it doesn't fit for the following reason. Jesus wasn't snatched up to heaven as soon as he was born. It said as soon as he was born, he was snatched up to heaven. Well, Jesus wasn't snatched up to heaven. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod and iron. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Well, Jesus wasn't caught up. That word caught up is the same word that we get the rapture from. It's snatched almost by force, the Greek word. It means to be pulled out violently, almost by force. That's the rapture. We'll suddenly meet him in the air, won't we? Caught up. We'll be caught up to be with the Lord, Paul says, and it's the same Greek word. I don't know the Greek word. I checked it up years ago. This is the second time I preached this study. So it was in my mind the first time. It's not now. But Jesus wasn't snatched up to heaven. He didn't ascend as soon as he was born, and he wasn't snatched up. He went slowly through the clouds. The disciples saw him, didn't they, Mount Olivet, and he went through the clouds, and he said the same way as he ascended, he'll come through the clouds. Jesus won't come suddenly, every hour see him, because he'll come through the clouds as he went, and they beheld him till he disappeared out of the clouds. So that's not a snatching up, is it? And he was 3 years doing his ministry. For me, it fits the bride of Christ, because the bride of Christ will rule the nations with a rod of iron, and we're going to be caught up as soon as we're born again. The dragon's waiting to stop the bride. You'll see why in the next study. Let me read it. John 20:17 first. This is to show that he wasn't caught up to heaven as soon as he was born. Herod tried to kill him when he was 2 years old, didn't he? And he wasn't snatched up then. Jesus said unto her, touch me not yet, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, my God and your God. So he was snatched up. He wasn't snatched up. He appeared alive after the resurrection. and said, I'm going now to my Father. He wasn't caught up. Oh, I've got the Greek word in my notes. Harpazo. H-A-P-A-Z-Z-O. Harpazo. It means to catch up, catch away, pluck up, inferring quick, almost by force. I think that got that from Strong's. It's the same word with us meeting Jesus as in the air, 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up. It's the same word, harpazo. So it's a snatching up, caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Lord. It says we'll be caught up, and we know it's a snatching up, don't we? So it's the same word. Revelation 2:24. This is the letters to the 7 churches, the Gentile churches. But unto you I say, and unto the rest in Thyatira, so it's the church of Thyatira, as many as have not this doctrine, and which have not known the depths of Satan as they speak, I will put upon you no other burden, but that which ye have already. Hold fast till I come. He that overcometh and keepeth my words unto the end, I will give him power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. So those that overcome will rule the nations with a rod of iron. I think this is the man-child, because it doesn't fit Jesus for me, but it fits the bride of Christ. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. I'm going to smite the nations with a rod of iron, and if you overcome, you will smite the nations with a rod of iron. The next study is part of this study. It's a short study. I've nearly come to an end. But you need to, if you're watching, it's on YouTube or Rumble or anywhere, you need to watch the next study and part them as one, because you'll understand why I think it's the bride. But you'll have to wait for that. I'm ending on a cliffhanger like the soaps, so you'll tune into the next one. Well, Paul used the birth pangs for the resurrection, for our deliverance at the first resurrection. Romans 8:22. And for we know the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together unto now. So he talks about travail as a birth pangs in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit. My spirit is redeemed, but my body certainly isn't. It keeps sinning despite me. But I'm not condemned. But it's not me that sin, it's sin that dwelleth in me. I'm redeemed. My spirit's redeemed. But I'm waiting for the redemption of my body. We have the first fruits of the Spirit. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves. We're groaning, we're travailing to be birthed, waiting for the adoption, to wit, that is, the redemption of our body. That's the first resurrection. We'll be glorified. We'll have a glorified body. We'll meet him in the air. I'm waiting for my salvation. He that endures to the end shall be saved. Your spirit's saved, but your body isn't. But God saves the whole man, not only your spirit. He'll change your body into an immortal body. So your spirit needs saving, doesn't it? Your body needs saving. We ourselves grow within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, that is, the redemption of our body. So your body's going to redeem this mortality and put immortality on. Wow, that's wonderful, isn't it? I'm groaning and travailing. When will that happen? The first resurrection. Will meet him in the air, this snatching away. That's why I believe Paul likened it to a birth, travailing in pain until now. We were ready to birth. That's when you're born again. John 3:16 is about salvation. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, whoever believeth on him shall be not perish but have everlasting life. That's salvation. But before it, he's not talking about salvation. He says you need to be born again. That's not salvation. That's different. That's when you get the resurrection body. You're born of, he said, what's born of the flesh is flesh. Well, I was born of the flesh, born of the waters. The waters broke, and I'm here, little Maurice Barrett, and I'm flesh and blood. But what's born of the Spirit is spirit. You've got to be born with a spiritual body. When you're born in the flesh, you've got a fleshly body. I've got to be born again with a spiritual body. So I understand when people say you're born again, but I think, no, you're saved. You're waiting to be born again. You're waiting for the birth to burst forth as a new creature when you're born again of the Spirit, and I've got a spiritual body. Because what's born of the flesh is flesh. What's born of the Spirit is spirit. I'm not spirit yet. I'm a body with a spirit in me, and I've got God's Spirit in me, but I need a spiritual body, don't I? So I need to be born again. If you disagree with that, God bless you, that's all right. That's how I see it. I don't think orthodox. I just read my Bible, and I see that God's talking about being born again as the new body, and then is salvation. Because if you read it in that light, it's talking about the spiritual birth and the physical birth. Then it's talking about being saved. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. I've sermons on it, so I probably confuse people by just giving a few sentences, but I can go into it. So, Paul uses the symbolism. Well, I believe Revelation is chronological, 12 and 13. And 13 fits perfectly. But that's the next study, the war in heaven. Because after the bride goes up, it says there was a war in heaven. So I believe the bride has to go up. The man-child has to be snatched up to heaven before there's a war in heaven. And Satan's cast out. Because when the bride goes up, the accuser of the brethren is cast down. He can't accuse us anymore. He's still the accuser of the brethren in 2025, isn't it? Yesterday, I lost my temper. I didn't, but I'll say I lost my temper. I sinned. And the devil says, there you are, Maurice. There you are, God. Maurice has sinned. He's the accuser of the brethren. And Jesus is at the right hand of God. He's not come yet. So he says, Father, I shed my blood for Maurice. Case dismissed. God is a judge, isn't he? So he's the accuser of the brethren. I think he's on the left hand of God, and Jesus is on the right hand. The advocate. In a court, you've got the advocate, the defending solicitor. You've all got the prosecutor, and they're on either side of the judge, aren't they? If that sounds bizarre. God is a judge, so we've got to think in judicial terms, haven't we? If Jesus is my advocate, who's the accuser of the brethren? Who's going to accuse me? Satan. And you have to go to court. You can't write a letter. So you have to be there in court, don't you? The advocate goes to court, and the prosecution is in court, and the judge is in court. You need three elements in to hold a court. If the prosecution doesn't turn up, the case is dismissed or deferred, isn't it? If the advocate doesn't turn up, you need the three elements. So I wasn't going to that. But the bride caught up with the new spiritual bodies. 12:6, Revelation. And when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. We'll look at that in the war in heaven. And God protects the woman for 1,260 days, 60 days. So that's interesting. I can't go into that. I'll finish now because it's halfway through a study. The next study, I'm preaching that tonight, actually. This is the afternoon, and I'm preaching that tonight, the war in heaven. So take it as one study. But I've split it up because it's hard to take in everything, and it's hard for me to speak for an hour and a half. I'd rather speak for 40 minutes. So God bless you. The next study, the war in heaven. Have a wonderful week. God bless you.